Animals feel pleasure in the company of their female partners. They also love their offspring. This gives rise to family connections, to the formation of society and of social virtues. With the evolution of body and mind, pleasures become many sided, and the acquirement of pleasure becomes in itself the principal factor in the development of man. Man seeks his pleasure outside himself, and he does so either for himself or for others. A point is reached when self is lost sight of, and self sacrifice for the good of others becomes a duty of pleasure. Self is estranged from the narrow groove of personality. It tries to identify itself with all beings. There is philanthropy, there is universal kindness. Still, the differences cause unrest and disquiet. Self finds no rest till it seeks its reality, till it makes a homeward journey, for even its own personality and the outside world lose all charm for it. Self finds bliss in self void of personality. This is spiritual bliss attained by those that are antarmukh, facing inwards, and not by those that are bahirmukh, which is facing outwards. Self, when seeking self, becomes united to the universal self as its eternal friend and its real aspect. The universal self in Vrindavana is Sri Krishna, and the bliss of the gopis is self attainment, attachment to self or Atma, and not to non self or worldly connections. It is to those and those only that eagerly desire to make this inward journey that the Vrindavana Leela is addressed. Nanda is bliss. He is spiritual bliss, the bliss of an antarmukha. It is spiritual bliss that attracts spirit unto itself. It is a field for spiritual growth, the nursery ground of enthusiastic devotion, and what is more, of devotional love. The ideal spiritual bliss is that of Radhika and of her fellow gopis. It is a bliss aspect of Ishvara that in the jiva causes mutual attractions and makes devotion a law, a necessity. Reflected in the universe at large, it is the one bond that holds together all beings and becomes a force of attraction on all planes. Man is guided by bliss in his relations to the universe. He is guided by bliss in his relation to himself. Nanda is located in the brain, in the thousand petaled lotus. The spiritual seat in the head is Gokul, the first abode of Nanda. Krishna appears in Gokul. The devotee sets out on his devotional journey. The first impediment of a devotee is mala or impurity. In spite of himself, he cannot get the better of his passions, his personal desires. They have such a strong and apparent charm. There is such an hereditary and accumulated attraction towards them, and that they easily overcome the devotional life in its infancy. The fascinating Putana overtook all by her charms, and she found an easy access to Krishna himself. She made an attempt to nurse Krishna with poisoned milk. She was killed, and Mala was removed. The next impediment is vikshepa or distraction. The mind, with its load of outside experiences, always responding to the outside world, is so much distracted, thinking now of this and now of that, that it has to be set right before further development is possible. The cart has to be upturned with its load of food articles, the cart of mind with its load of experiences. That is, the man has to become antarmukha. When this is done, the asura of distraction, Trinavarta or whirlwind, is easily killed. The gopis were now void of impurities and void of distraction, yet more they were being attracted to Krishna. Krishna favored them by stealing the fruits of their karma or action and accepting them for himself. Sri Krishna said to Arjuna, "You have a right to the karma only and not to the fruits thereof." The senses of the gopis used to roam about in the performance of daily duties, and they brought back perceptions and conceptions for the day which were worked out by the gopis as duty required. The perceptions and conceptions are the milk products and milk. They were churned into the karma of the gopis. The senses are the cows, the outside objects of perception, their grass. The Brahma Vivarta Purana says Ghrita is obtained from milk, Yajna is performed with Ghrita, and all happiness arises out of the performance of Yajna, Prakriti Kanda. The preparation of milk products is the karma or the sacrifice of the gopis. The husk stand is the discriminating faculty, that which separates the husk from the grains. When Krishna becomes fastened to the discriminating faculty, not that anyone can fasten him with any effort of his own, when right and wrong are centered in him, self becomes abnegated and offered up entirely to Krishna, egoism and ignorance. The pair of Arjuna trees disappear, though deeply rooted in man. When fruits are offered to Krishna, there is a rich return. We have reached here a point in spiritual progress. Personality has been completely given up. Brain intellect is no longer congenial to spiritual progress. The head retards the spiritual man and does not carry him forward. The elders of Gokula sat in council and they decided to leave Gokula for Vrindavana. Vrindavana is the heart. The eight petaled lotus in the heart is the permanent abode of Sri Krishna. The 12 forests are 12 centers, 4 into 3, the primary number being 4, the number of the sacred Tetraktis. Within the heart, the only Purusha is Sri Krishna. Others have to make themselves passive to him. The gopis, the ideal devotees of Purusha in their heart, left the world outside their husbands and homes and placed themselves entirely at the service of the divine Lord. Let us approach the sublime truths of the Vrindavana Upasana with the utmost solemnity possible. Those who cannot bring themselves to an exalted appreciation of the Vrindavana Leela had better not read the Bhagavata at all. The Gopas and Gopis went to Vrindavana. Rama and Krishna headed the Gopa boys and looked after the calves. What are the cows and the calves? Who are the Gopas, the Gopa boys, and the Gopis? Once more, let us understand the triad. Adhyatma, Adhibhuta, and Adhidaiva take sight. The sense of sight comes in contact with the outward world and carries the perception of sight to the possessor of the eye under the guidance of a conscious energy. The senses and the mind are cows or adhyatma. The outside world is grass or adhibhuta. The possessor of the senses and the mind is the gopi, the ego or jiva. In Vrindavana, the gopis are the highest jivas or rishis, as explained in the Upanishads. The conscious energy is the gopa or adhideva. The Adhidevas are the Vedic Devas, as we have already seen. The Gopas are reincarnations of the Devas, as explained in the Upanishads. Ordinarily, Gopas lead the cows or the Adhidevas lead the senses. But in Vrindavana, the Devas surrender themselves entirely to Krishna. The calves or the Vatsas are the modifications of the senses and the mind, the Vrittis. In Vrindavana, Rama and Krishna first tended the calves. The Gopa boys were the attendants of Rama and Krishna, the Parishads or companions who reached very near the state of divinity, the workmates of Bhagavan in the preservation of the universe. The Lord tended the vrittis of the mind, therefore they could not go astray. Now let us follow up the working of the divine in the heart of the individual and the killing of all obstacles. Vatsa, Baka, Agha, and Brahma. The Vatsasura is the vritti of the mind. If a non spiritual vritti becomes unconsciously mixed up with the spiritual vrittis of the mind, it has instantly to be killed. Baka or the crane stands for religious hypocrisy. Spiritual life rejects all hypocrisy, all traces of untruth in any form. When these two asuras are destroyed, a third asura appears on the scene, the terrible Agha. Agha is sin and evil deed. The sins of a man, his past evil deeds, stand up for a while and swallow up all that is divine in him. Even gods cannot overcome Agha. Those who know the struggles of a devotee know very well how hard it is when all that is evil in man, the accumulated tendencies of innumerable births, rise up in rebellion, as it were, at a certain stage of his progress. Who else but Sri Krishna can save a devotee at such a crisis? The flesh itself has to be destroyed and the whole nature changed. The devotee undergoes a second birth, as it were. His vrittis are not the vrittis of yore. Even the energies that guide these vrittis undergo change. Every Brahmana knows the mantra that is recited for the suppression of Agha. It's called Aghamarshana. It goes back to the pre manifesting period when days and nights did not exist. The serpent Agha swallowed up Krishna and his companions. Krishna came out victorious and he revivified his companions. The vrittis underwent change by this process and also those that guided them. It was another creation altogether. The forms and varieties of Brahma's creation had no meaning now in them. What if the vrittis were now removed from the gopis or the gopa boys kept out in a body? They all lost their distinctive features, their differences were gone, all was become divine, the vrittis and the gopa boys. So when Brahma concealed the calves and the gopa boys, he only thought of his own creation. The vrittis and the gopa boys came out in divinity, which was now their own reality. They were all parts of Sri Krishna himself. They were manifestly sparks or rays of Atma itself. The senses and the mind were now irresistibly drawn towards their calves. The Gopas were more than ever attached to their boys. Balarama noticed this and spoke to Krishna. The query of Raja Parikshit and the reply of Shuka explain the whole position. This brings us to the end of the Kumar Leela of Sri Krishna, which prepares the way for the union of the human soul with the oversoul of Jivatma with Paramatma. We come next to the Pauganda Leela when Krishna guided the mind itself and all were attached to him. Krishna, the tender of the cows. Rama and Krishna were now in charge of the cows themselves, the senses and the mind. The Kaliya serpent. Yama is the death god. The river Yamuna is his sister. Kaliya is from Kala or time. Kaliya, with its 100 hoods, is the lifetime of one birth, represented by 100 years. The serpent could not be killed, but only sent away from Vrindavana. The devotees got over the periodic death transformation, the conflagration, and pralamba. As the followers of Krishna were saved from death on the one hand, so they were saved from conflagration, annihilation of form, and loss of the ego on the other hand. In the kingdom of divine bliss, everything now was divine. The purified mind did not go astray. It remained entirely attached to Sri Krishna. Personality was now thoroughly conquered. The jiva had acquired matter congenial to the plane of the first Purusha, and he no longer ran the risk of death or annihilation. The gopis completed their homeward journey, and they knew nothing except their Lord Krishna. They gave up all for the sake of the Lord. The Lord was all in all to them. They were bound to him by the most sacred ties of devotional love. We shall now see how they became united to the divine Lord. The gopis and the stealing of their clothes. The rains followed the summer, and there was a flow of spirituality all around. The autumn followed, and it was calm, clear, and transparent. When the water is pure, transparent, and calm, and the sun is over, it can anything prevent the reflection of the sun's image on its bosom. The gopis drew unto themselves the image of Sri Krishna. There was no muddiness in them as in ordinary mortals. They had not the calls of their desires, others' desires. It's not till the ear ceases to hear the outside world that it is open to the music in the heart, the flute of Sri Krishna. The Rupa of Krishna becomes manifest when all worldly Rupas lose their charm. The gopis even smelt the divine fragrance of Sri Krishna. They felt his divine touch and they tasted the honey of Sri Krishna's lips. The charms of the world all dead and gone, there remains only one attraction, that is of Sri Krishna, the only Purusha in Vrindavana. The gopis now had a right to approach Sri Krishna as their lover. They became full of him, and they worshipped Katyayani to gain their object. It was then that Sri Krishna stripped them of their clothes. No false shame, no false considerations should now deter the gopis. They should lay themselves bare before Sri Krishna. No hiding, no half speaking. Virtuous girls, I know your resolve. It is to worship me. I also approve of it, and so it must succeed. This was the long and short of the whole affair. The gopis saw they were found out. So it was to be a matter of open love now. We shall pass over a few digression before we come back to the gopis and consummation of their love in Rasalila. Vedic Brahmins and their wives. Those that were under the influence of Vedic yajnas could not easily accept the self sacrificing path of compassion. The students of Bhagavad Gita know very well that Sri Krishna raised his voice against Vedic karma and preached the performance of unselfish karma in its stead. The Vedic Brahmanas did not follow him for a time, but the tide overlooked their unselfish wives, who were attached to the path of unselfishness and compassion, blended as it was with the path of devotion to the Lord Sri Krishna. The wives brought their husbands round, and the cause triumphed in all India. The raising of Govardhana. The raising of Govardhana is only a sequel to the suppression of Vedic yajnas. Why are the gods headed by Indra worshipped? Because the Indriyas are their channels of communion with men, and they can influence men through those channels. They are therefore called Adi Devas. They are also the hands of providence, and through them we get all the things of the earth. But can they give us anything that is not allotted to us by our own karma? If a prolonged and unhindered connection with the monastic world or a prolonged Svarga experience is brought about by the performance of the Vedic yajnas, it is on account of the superior force exerted over the devas acquired by such performances and is therefore due to karma. The devas cannot override karma, but still men have to depend upon the gods in their everyday lives. They are the hands of the karmic dispenser. True, they deal out things according to the karma of men, but they give to men the desired objects of life, and in return, they expect yajna offerings to them. This is the old law of the existence of beings. The universe itself is the outcome of sacrifice and interdependence, the law of giving and taking. If men broke that law, what wonder that the gods should resent it? But there was a higher law, governing men and devas alike, the law of direct communion with the Lord of all, the supreme karmic dispenser, the Adiyagna of Bhagavad Gita. If men placed themselves and their karma entirely at the service of the Lord, where was room left for the devas? Against such men, the gods themselves lost all power. The hill Govardhana is the accumulated karma of the gopis, which gives her ground for their cows. Krishna bears the burden of his bhaktas' karma, and he lifted up the karmic hill of his devoted band with very little effort of his own. And when Sri Krishna bears the karma of his bhaktas, the devas are powerless against them. It is karma that nourishes the senses, and hence the hill is called Govardhana.